We are live right now on Fresh Labs live show. We are going to start in 5 minutes. But Johnny, is there any interesting updates that you have that you want to share before we get started?
Oh, just in general and around the topics we cover, or just in life?
Well, anything cool in tech world. I think a lot happened recently, and I
Yeah,
know we're both following on that.
yeah, there is. There's a ton of news right now, and I know we're going to cover some of it a little bit later. But yeah, there still seems to be a ton of hype around a lot of the XR technologies, and so I know one thing we're not covering today that I'm actually super excited about is that uh, it's a funny thing to say, but there are famous Apple leakers, right? People that basically
Mm-hmm.
predict when products will get released, and they have a really, really high, percentage of accuracy. There's even a site to look at all of the leakers and say how accurate have they been, and they'll give you a rating like they're 86% accurate, 95%. One of the top ones on that list, one of the top 3, has recently claimed that Apple's mixed reality headset is coming in January. Like the announcement will happen in January, and
And
so
then in
yeah.
2023, right?
So January 2023, at least according to this leaker, you're gonna have you're gonna have we're gonna have at least the announcement of the mixed reality headset. I was
Is it
hoping for a
Minchi?
September, like the big keynote where they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and here's a preview, more to come in January. Even that would be huge news because Apple has never officially said we're going to release a product called that's a mixed reality headset. What we have heard is mixed reality, or they talk about augmented reality is an important part of our future. There are hundreds of patents around mixed reality headset, augmented, virtual reality, interactions with gestures, cool innovative tech with cameras and eye tracking. So all that stuff we've seen, but we've never seen an official announcement. So that's been something I've been keeping an eye on. What about you, Elisha?
Yeah, and by the way, was that from Minchi Cho?
I think it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and he and I think oh my God, what's her name? Jane? I think they do a pretty good job predicting. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be excited with the some of the AR technology announcements, and I know we're gonna cover some of it, but I think the more that we go to the light AR glass headsets, and with the even with the additional device, right, like a puck that's delivering the stream to the AR, I think I really want to just get hands on like one of them and start playing with it. So
Yeah.
I'm looking for if there's a way to get some exclusive access, preview access to those devices. That'll be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. I mean, is there one that's currently out right now that you're like, I want to get my hands on that one?
That's a good question. Think I think the Virtue one, I know that was for gaming, but that seems like interesting idea. We did look at a couple in the some of the episodes back, but I think any of them I'll be happy. Anything that I can actually create some program to display something with the open SDK, I think
Yeah.
I really just want to jump on and try.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
For me, I would say it's even though the Spectacle 4th generation augmented reality glasses look probably like the least approachable, the least discreet. They kind of have weird, kind of really sharp edges to them. It's kind of like the Cybertruck of augmented reality glasses, where it's like a really particular style that you can either hate or you can love. There's really drastic opinions on it, but I suspect that the 4th generation spectacles from Snapchat are they're just more of a let's get glasses in people's hands. This isn't exactly what it's going to look like. I think they're going to do an iteration on it. But those particular glasses with Lens Studio, the actual platform that you can use to create augmented reality and filters and stuff, it's so powerful. Like I'd love to get my hands on that. Having played with Lens Studio and stuff, like those, just getting those particular set of augmented reality glasses would be a lot of fun. I've seen some of the coolest prototypes to date have been from that from those.
Yeah. Well, if anybody can give us access to those preview devices, we'll be happy to take it, do some review, even create some software for it. But we are at the top of the hour of Fresh Laughs Live. And we do this every Wednesday noon in the Pacific time zones. And we cover topics of what happened in the last week of the emerging tech world. We cover AR, VR, Metaverse, Web3, blockchain, all these emerging technologies that
Yeah.
we are both interested in following and also like to share our
Yeah.
understanding of what's happening. And we are also starting to now do some showcases, which you guys will see at the end, where we actually get hands on these technologies and show what we come up with and play with them and let you guys know what we think of the technology itself. Is it ready to be used for your business cases, or do we think, well, maybe not quite there yet, but it's a glimpse of where we are headed? So hopefully those things will be educational for you guys. Johnny, anything you want to add before we start the show?
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I think I really enjoy. I mean, we're always on top of these trends. We're looking at them, and it's cool that we have a platform like Fresh Labs to talk about them and actually just document things that you and I normally are just really interested in. But something that's uncharacteristic for us is that like we're not typically just talking about things like we do in Fresh Labs. We're like, oh, this is really cool, great news, like cool headset coming out. We're coming from a side, especially with our department inside of Fresh Consulting called Fresh Labs. We build things, like we build things and we experiment, and we've done some really really cool, fun projects. And so this is like the start. July 1st. Let's call it July 1st. We're gonna show some stuff, Elisha, like you talked about. But I think going forward, you can expect to see actual hands-on stuff like Elisha said. And I think that's the part that I'm most excited about, so that we can actually showcase and actually bring some new things into the world. You can follow maybe a multi-part series of different things that we're building. I don't know how much we want to give a preview of, but maybe when we get to the showcase part of the show today, we can talk about it. But I'm most excited about that stuff too. And so definitely give us a follow on these different platforms you see here at the bottom. These are our social media platforms. A lot of them are individual, kind of personal, like LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, things like that. But we cover a lot of the same stuff, and it's all kind of under this umbrella of Fresh Consulting, Fresh Labs. So it's pretty fun.
Yes, and we also have a YouTube live stream, YouTube channel. You might be watching from YouTube right now. You can go ahead and subscribe and also hit the bell so that every time we go live, you get notified. And we do this every Wednesday at noon Pacific time. And also we have LinkedIn page if you'd like to follow us on LinkedIn. If you search Fresh Labs, and I think oh, there you go. LinkedIn.com/showcase/Fresh Labs. You can follow our posts and everything there. And there you can also subscribe to the event itself so that when we go live, you also get notified on LinkedIn. And soon we are able to go live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So once we get enough followers, we can start doing that. And my name is Elisha Tarada. I'm the Technical Innovation Director at Fresh Labs. And we have a co host, Johnny Rodriguez, who is the Strategic Innovation Director. And we work together hand in hand. I'm right now Seattle based, Johnny is in Texas based. So we have some of ourselves across the US. So let's get started with episode 8 of Fresh Labs live show. And structure is lightning news that we're going to cover, small news really fast. We are going to also spend a little bit more time talking about Orlando, Florida, getting into the metaverse, and Nojo Vision Smart Contact, and Fresh Showcase, where we actually talk about the hands-on stuff that we're doing. So lightning news first. The first news is Lowe's launches 3D assets for building the metaverse. Essentially, they release all these 3D assets for the builders or creators of the metaverse to use it. So, for example, we talked about how we're spending time creating some of the Fresh Labs rooms in Spatial. Essentially, if you go to their assets website, you can download the 3D asset file to your computer, and then you can directly import into worlds like Spatial if the file
Whoa.
format is supported. And I thought this is an interesting way to get into the metaverse, Johnny, because instead of them creating the world, they're saying, "Hey, you go create the world, but use our furniture, our carpets, and our appliances."
Do they
So
come with like Lowe's tags or like is it like do they
that's
feel
a
kind
good
of white
question.
labeled?
That's a good question. I didn't see from the visual that you see the screenshot. That's directly from their website.
Yeah,
Maybe if you inspect like really close, you can tell they came from Lowe's. But that I thought that's an interesting way for company to enter into metaverse without them spending time into them creating metaverse or maintaining
that's
the
a great
metaverse world.
idea.
Yeah. So if you are companies like Lowe's where you have physical products like furnitures, I think that's a cool idea. And like IKEA should probably get into it.
Amazon too.
Amazon
Imagine
should
like
get into it.
yeah.
So yeah, if you're a business in that realm, we can help prepare those assets for you as well. So contact us if you're in a similar business. The second news is Solana Saga smartphone, which was very interesting concept. Basically, Solana itself has a phone called Saga. And if you look up behind the scenes, the phone actually already existed, and then they kind of rebranded the phone called Ozum and call it a Solana Saga smartphone. And I won't go into much detail, but the phone costs $1,000, basically like a flagship model, has pretty high spec, high refresh rate, comes with 512 gigabyte SSD. Like, oh wow, that's pretty specced out phone. And this is very interesting. We talk about how to get from physical to the virtual. This is like the other way around scenario where the Solana, the blockchain, the virtual Web3 stuff is actually coming to the physical device. And Johnny, we've seen this trend of companies spending their efforts into smartphone market because virtually everyone has smartphones. So if you want to promote your Web3 stuff, what better way than to build the smartphone itself so that it's built in? Kind of like how Samsung does the same strategy, where if you want to sell Samsung services or ecosystem of Samsung, why not build 100 Samsung products so that you just buy into the same thing? Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know because it's hard to think about mobile phones entering the market when it's so like, it's like Apple's established. Android phones are established. You're getting like the Pixels or you're getting the Samsung Galaxy phones. You have big companies like Microsoft that eventually had to partner with Android to do like with Google to release phones and stuff now versus Windows phones. So it's a really interesting thing. Um, uh, just to see like a
Yeah.
blockchain drop it. I wonder if it's
Yeah.
more of like you said, a promotional thing to say, because
I think
people want to
so.
be able to say we're the first blockchain to launch a
A-
product like a
And
phone that you're gonna wear with
rebranding
it.
possibly struggling phones that nobody knows about. So
Yep.
it's based on Android, but yeah, check out the news article if you are interested in more. The next news, Johnny.
Yeah, this is from Niantic, the creators of Pokemon Go. A lot of people know about that one. It was the biggest app to launch that had an augmented reality experience back in 2016, I think it was. And there's been other experiences that they've launched, but this is a big one. I like sports, but I think what's really interesting is that if you think about what Niantic did with Pokemon, and how that became such a huge revolution and bringing that nostalgic kind of feeling back of Pokemon. Well, they've partnered with the NBA to launch. This hasn't been launched yet, but it's coming. It's to launch this mobile game called NBA All World, and it's like the first of its kind, free to play, all those kinds of things. But it's geolocation based, similar to Pokemon Go, and there's not a ton of details about it quite yet. But it's a pretty big deal because of how big Niantic is and how big the NBA is, and the fact that they're going to actually have the NBA players engaged in this place, and it's going to be a way. What we do know is it's going to be a way for the players to like represent what countries they're from or their cities they're from and showcase the culture of their neighborhoods and stuff. So imagine if you're in the same city as an NBA player like Dallas or Chicago or Detroit, whatever it is, there's going to be some connection to the players, but also allows them to fully kind of immerse themselves in the energy and excitement of the NBA. So we don't know what that means. I suspect it might be things like being able to watch games or interact with players, players engaging with fans, fans with players, probably some gaming components of collecting like you would imagine with Pokemon. So more to come on that, but pretty exciting kind of partnership there with Niantic and the NBA.
Cool. When they release, I think we can play with it and then
Yeah.
showcase what they do. The next news is Snap, Coca-Cola, and Kid Laroi. I don't know the
Leroy,
last
yeah.
one. I don't know the last part.
This is a popular singer right now, musician, has done he's been on, like, the charts, recently, but what's really cool about this, normally we don't wanna just, like, talk about Snapchat lenses that dropped, but what's interesting is that it is a Snapchat, Coca-Cola, and an artist partnership. And what's really cool about it is that the innovative thing that's going on isn't that it's just a Snapchat partnership. As you can see in my demo here that I did this morning,
Oh, that's
is
cool.
it's a full-fledged music video that's being launched inside of Snapchat, and it's all in
Wow.
3D. You're able to listen to him, and he was actually in a motion tracked suit that was actually tracking him as he performed, and then they turned that into an avatar, a digital representation of him as an artist that's now in this again all tied into one a single filter, and you're able to experience a music video. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like that, where it's a music video. I mean, there's things like that with AR, but not with Snapchat partnering with a big company like Coca-Cola and an artist. So I actually have the Snap code right there. The way it works is if you do have a Snapchat account or like the app, you can take a photo of this or actually click and hold on the screen, and it'll scan anything that's in the camera's view, and then it'll launch this experience of the show. So if you want to screenshot this for later, you can, or look it up later, but it's done through Coke Studio. But just something I wanted to share because it was a pretty innovative way to connect fans with a brand, and just an innovative way with those, if you remember, 300 million plus daily active users using augmented reality in Snapchat. So it's a pretty big release.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Wow. I'm kind of amazed by how interactive and cool this looks. Yeah.
This
It
is
took
what I mean by, like, I'm so excited about Snapchat's like Lens Studio and some of the capabilities. It's like, yeah, you can do face filters like you just saw on my screen, but then you can do things like this where it's like bringing in full-fledged experiences and things like that. So
cool. Well, let's move on to the top news. We are covering two news today. And the first one I wanted to cover is Orlando and Metaverse. And this is interesting trend that we keep seeing. For example, Singapore had a integration or collaboration with one of the company in the startup in Singapore to create the metaverse of the Singapore. And this is very similar where Orlando is trying to get into the metaverse game by creating the digital twin. And I'll get to that in a second. But I want to cover a few key points from this Orlando trying to basically get themselves known beyond the Magic Kingdom. When we think about what's Orlando, oh, we just go there for theme park and that's it, right? Actually, there's a lot of the emerging tech things happening, and I didn't know this until I read the article. But basically, a snapshot of it, they actually spend or have a 6 billion market for defense related AR and VR in Orlando. A lot of Unity engineers basically working out of the Orlando because of these defense contract that they're building a lot of like simulations within the VR AR space. So they actually have a lot of like capital activities and engineers in Orlando doing all that. And they are looking to call brand themselves the Meta Center. So Orlando hopes to be known as hub for the metaverse, Web3, AR, VR, all these things, and not just be the theme park destination, but also be the center of all these cool technology happening. And like I mentioned, they have a lot of Unity engineers, and the market is really large. And these are like, because these are defense, you don't really see it maybe surface through like a consumer oriented use, but there's a lot happening there. And also, there are a lot of game companies that are present in the Orlando, including like EA, the Electric Arts, and Unity, Game Sim, and they have some AI companies that are there that are not as known, but I think they're more like a behind the scenes AI companies. that are not necessarily coming out with the consumer like Snapchat product that everyone can see, but like behind the scenes, they're powering a lot of the engineering. So I wouldn't be surprised if all these cool metaverse tech comes out of Orlando. And
Hmm.
the last part I wanted to cover quickly is that they are covering or creating the digital twin of the Orlando, so 800 square mile metro area, and it use all the scannings of the buildings to create the metaverse. Any initial reaction, Johnny, of the
It's interesting. I
tech?
have so many questions for you, but maybe you'll cover some of them later. I can save some of them, but yeah, my initial impression is, yeah, I think it's really innovative for a city. Like one of my questions is who's actually putting it on? Is it the city of Orlando? Like, is it a local government thing? And they're the
Yes.
ones that have is the $6 billion market more of just like in Orlando, there's $6 billion of defense related stuff happening? Or are you saying that it's like the city of Orlando itself has a $6 billion fund to be able to work on AR VR stuff?
So it's the market itself, I believe,
Got
is
it.
a $6 billion. So activity worth $6 billion
Got it. I
happening
got it. Got it.
inside. And yes, it is the city actually, the city and the Unity
Wow.
partnering together to create the metaverse.
Oh, Unity's partnering with the city. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, I was gonna say who's
Yep.
actually taking on the work. So
Yep.
Unity's doing a service for the city of Orlando, and they're creating a digital kind of twin. And it's 800 square feet of the metro area. I wonder why. Maybe
Metro
that's where
area.
the most concentration is of those developers and businesses and things like that.
Yeah, I think people are really interested in cityscape a lot. And in a recent research I've done on the metaverse creation and what it means to create digital twin of the city, right? A city is like the center of like a real estate. A lot of the real estate transactions happen, and a lot of times people are interested in like locate geolocation detail information of the city. So for example, where do I park? Where do I go to eat out between like office lunch time?
Mm, yeah,
There's more interested in figuring out the logistics within the busy city versus if you're outside of the city, it's like, well, there's only one coffee place to go and it's like
yeah.
20 minutes away. So you're probably not as interested in. But because a lot of like tenants come in and come out of the buildings, right? Commercial buildings, whether they're businesses or office buildings trying to occupy. So I know there's a lot of interest, and also that's where a lot of a city center, like Capitol buildings and all these tend to reside. So I assume
Yeah.
a lot of like evacuation plan, emergency plan. If the protester shows up in this street, then how do you deal with the protests going on? I assume a lot of the crimes also concentrate in the city. So I think that's why there's a lot of interest in a lot of
Hmm.
the digital twin. And also, I think from the marketing perspective, it is also easier to maybe capture like the city of Austin, the main city buildings are kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cooler attraction, I think, with the historic buildings.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, can I rapid fire question, or do you have more to cover on this? Because I
Sure.
definitely
Yeah, I may not have all the answers.
that's okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
So, do you know if, what platform is there a platform selection? Are they gonna be placed on a specific existing metaverse platform? Are they creating their own metaverse environment?
That's a really good question. I didn't see any specific world or tech being mentioned. I assume it's going to be something that they have more control over because it's a huge land, right? So you can't be building in Decentraland because you can't buy up all these land to build the experience. And the fact that they're
Yeah,
scanning all the textures of building, it has to be one of the high fidelity metaverse world, and there are not that many out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they launch this experience something outside of maybe existing
yeah.
like blockchain based metaverse
Yeah, it
world.
seems like it would be separate from everything you've said. What about, you talked about the scanning portion. I was curious on is there a platform or a service or a business that they're using to be able to capture the is it like is it, proprietary drones or some business or something like that to get the scans?
Yeah, I would love to know that as well. I don't think the article I was reading necessarily explained that. They do have a lot of companies based on that. So, like some of the AI companies, VR companies, I bet they're
Yeah.
working together. I don't know if they actually disclose. I bet if you go read into the city's like a proposal or something, I bet they probably list out who they're working with. So that would be cool.
Yeah.
But I would
Mhm.
assume proprietary technology is being involved because scanning city, for one thing, the city has to approve, drones being flown around the buildings, and usually that's a no unless you have explicit
You have a
license,
license and
right?
permission and things like that, yeah.
Right. And I think that's the interesting part that I want to explain. We took away the definition of the week, but the idea is that we actually talk about some of the definition during these articles. And digital twin is we want to kind of rehash the definition where that I think Johnny, you can explain a little bit better, but digital twin in most common use case, most common way that people talk about it is basically a replica of something that exists in the physical world. For example, a city represented into the virtual world. And the fidelity, I think, can be argued between like simple square boxes representing. But I think most of the time when we talk about digital twin or when we see it in the news, it's more high fidelity replica. Joni, do you have anything to add?
I mean, yeah, I think you covered most of it. Yeah, it's a virtual model designed to accurately reflect something that's physical. That could be an object, a location, buildings, like you talked about the city. Um, so if it's an object that's being studied, for example, it could be like a wind turbine or a specific um, machine to that automatically is building something or testing something. And it has sensors tied to it and has a bunch of functionality. A digital twin can represent. You can do something like that to be doing tests. You can also just do tests like energy output and the performance and temperature, weather conditions. You can simulate a lot of things in these environments. But yeah, as it relates to kind of Orlando, in this case, it's like they're doing, maybe it's less of the testing. It could be, that would be pretty interesting if they can test
I
conditions
think
and
they would be based on the fact that they work with the defense program a lot. I would assume,
oh
like,
yeah.
okay, if the emergency scenario happens, right? How would you react? So that I don't know if
Yeah.
that's consumer facing. I think consumer facing might just be more fun, positive part. I don't think you
Yeah.
can simulate how to destroy the city,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I bet they have their own version where they can do that. So it's probably like a dual purpose. I'm making up a lot of assumptions, but that's how I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
approach. Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the only thing I'd add to the digital twin part, just different ways that sometimes it gets leveraged, but yeah, this definitely seems like it's a digital twin if there's gonna be some scan of a specific 800 square mile kind of metro area. Um, Lots of
Yeah.
different use cases for that, so
Yeah. And for a business use case where if you're interested in building a cityscape as a digital twin, that's something we can actually help consult and look at some of the technologies you to put it together. Depending on some of the fidelity, obviously we wouldn't be able to help create something at this scale for obvious reasons where Orlando basically owns their own licensing and permission to do super high fidelity like exact replica. And my prediction is that each city will basically own the rights to their own landscape, their own texture. And I don't know if they're going to open source those information or
yeah.
technologies, but if you're a third party company interested in having information like this to do different things, like maybe it's the defense, maybe it's the simulator, we can help, but it would most likely not going to be in super high fidelity where you can see like the texture of this light signal reflecting upon the puddle into this
Yeah.
historic building. It's more like pretty good rendering, but it may take a lot of manual work to look at Google Street View to match, as opposed to being able to use aerial information
Yep.
to build it. So realistically, most third-party services who is not working with the city directly, we can still help create those experiences. So please let us know if there is a need in your business to do something like this,
Yeah.
and we can help cover different cities where you may not have special permission or rights to fly the drones, but we can create very similar experience to
I
what
wonder if
Orlando is building.
I wonder if like we'll ever see something like Google Maps or Apple Maps. These like kind of full-fledged teams and businesses that are doing mapping, right? Maybe it's like I was gonna say MapQuest. I don't even know if that exists. I was thinking Mapbox or like, yeah, maybe Apple Maps, Google Maps. Like the fact that they do regular scanning from aerial locations, and then obviously like every year we're getting more and more updates of how they turn that into 3D versions. Just the idea of like them saying, "Oh, by the way, Google Maps is now just a metaverse environment, and instead of Street View, you can go into like interactive mode, and you can use your avatar and go around and visit a business." And so every business can now claim, in the same way they do Google Maps, you can go claim your business and say where your business location is, and you can even have tools available to you as a business to like promote events and host things like meetups or sell physical products and things like that, where it becomes like this thing available to everywhere, to everyone,
Yeah,
in the same way that
yeah.
Google Maps is.
Yeah, I think the only barrier might be the licensing fee, depending on what Google charges, or they will always make sure that Google logo is present. So
Yeah.
in the case of wanting to do white labeling, it might be trickier. And also Google may or may not have ability to create that more polygon scanning based on LiDAR. They might do that based on some of the new tech coming out where based on 2D images from satellite image, right? Only that you can actually create these cool, like
Mm,
realistic mapping of the building. So I think what this Orlando and Unity and all these companies are doing will always, I think, will come ahead because they have all these money and ability to do it. But I'll be excited to get like a second tier fidelity
yeah,
on a Google map where anyone can access in the metaverse and we can
yeah,
use the API to explore. So I think as we get more information, something interesting from Orlando, or as we get hands on, I think we'll cover this again. But I'm very excited
definitely.
about this.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's look into the. Oh, that was a video, by the way, of their promo of like, oh, we're the new tech hub, more than a Magic Kingdom. Let's
Yeah, maybe let's watch this. I think it's worth watching through this a little bit. So we're seeing they're showing that it's such a big tech hub where things are happening, all these different businesses, and it's like a central place for tech. I'm assuming.
yeah. Next time I'll pay attention to a possible sprinkle of these texts that we may be able to see in the cityscape. I'll be excited for that.
Definitely. Cool. Well, the next news article, Elisha, is actually something that was in the news yesterday, actually. So we talk a lot about extended reality, talking about augmented reality headsets and VR. We've talked a lot about Meta and some of the really cool, innovative stuff that they're doing. And this company's been on our radar, I think, for a little while. We've heard of Mojo Vision and the fact they have this augmented reality enabled smart contact lens. Um, and that's been on the radar, and it's been like, cool. It's got to be out in the future, though. Like, it can't be, it's like that's coming maybe in a few years. There's so much that has to happen before they actually can put that on a human eye. Well, the news is instead of it being something from 2050, right? Here we are in 2020, and Mojo Vision's CEO successfully wore their feature complete augmented reality enabled smart contact lens, and he wore it for about an hour. And it didn't get warm. There are a few interviews that I've been able to kind of go and capture details on and get insights, and it didn't heat up, didn't cause any damage. He didn't have to wear an eye patch, later.
That
It
would be
ended
very
up,
scary.
yeah, it would be very scary to be that. And it's the CEO saying, "Hey, I really believe in our product. I'm willing to wear it." It kind of makes sense that he was the one to do that versus saying, "Hey, let's get a let's get a low level employee to come in."
It's like the scientists from back in time, right? Where they would do surgery on themselves to
It's
advance the
true. It's
human.
kinda like, yeah, you
Yeah,
put your money where your mouth is. Like, okay, if you
yeah.
believe in it, try it. And that's obviously,
So now you put your eyes where your wait, you put your money where your eyes are,
put your money where your eyes
right?
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how much that prototype cost. but it's super interesting, and I want to bring it up because it can sound pretty crazy and intimidating, or like kind of scary, to be honest. The thought of like putting something in your eye. Often people get the impression with some technology that's so futuristic that we can't understand. We think it's really magical or really scary, right? That's how it was with planes. Think about how massive planes are and all the sensors in them, and how it took so many years, like over 100 years, for it to be adopted by 50 million people, right? This is one that is so futuristic that, again, to some it feels magical, and to others it feels really, really scary. And others are probably really excited. I'm one that's excited. I definitely am not going to be on the prototype of this thing, but hey, I'll probably be an early beta adopter of something like this to test out. Obviously, it's probably still years in the future before we actually can get this to consumers. But the news basically is it's been worn by a human, and it was done by their CEO, Drew Perkins, from Mojo Vision. And it's been 7 years in the making that they've been talking about it and building it. What's really, really cool about this company, and I'll show this in the next slide, um, uh, is around the fact that yeah, we can come back to the other slide, but the fact that when they kind of showed their roadmap, um, they basically have been right on. They've been like very, very accurate. That's kind of uncharacteristic for a lot of these companies working with a lot of technology like that. So you can see that, yeah, 2017, they're like, we're gonna have a single LED and we want to have wireless power in it, and they were able to do that. Okay, now let's get like a static image to show up in a projector, right? Okay, now let's do wireless data. Now let's do semi-automatic. So you could see that they've been moving and moving and moving, and they knew that in 2022 they wanted to get to a feature complete contact lens. So you can see that this particular lens, and you can see the video on the right and some of their promo of like how it might look. The technology, it is augmented reality, not just a heads up display that just kind of shows data, but actually as you're looking around, kind of recognize things. If you go back one, Elisha, some of the specs on this thing on the current feature complete version, I think here on the slide before, yep, you have about 14,000 pixels per inch.
Wow.
It's the world's smallest micro LED micro display for content. I think there are smaller ones that aren't made to be put in lenses or to see things or to show content. Um, this is the smallest of its kind in the world, so it's so dense on the imagery. The image sensor
Wow.
has capabilities for computer vision and edge detection. It's already been proven; they already can do that. It has eye tracking, so it has an accelerometer, has gyroscope, and a magnometer, a magnetic. How do you say that? Magnetometer, magnetometer sensor.
Magnetometer.
So it has sensors to be able to do the eye tracking, and that's often one of the biggest questions I get is like, cool, how do you actually control the thing? Well, and they're like, well, your eye's actually a really good mouse. Like wherever you look, and they have things like the accelerator and the gyroscope to get information, and they even have this really patented trademark on this terminology they use that talks about, and I don't even know the word off the top of my head right now, but this give you the information when you need it, have it go away when you don't. That is a nuance that
Oh,
you have to figure out
it's like a
when to work.
HUD, but only when I intend to have the HUD
Yep.
come up.
Yep. And it's got a compact battery system. So the limitation of the hour of him wearing it wasn't around the battery, from my understanding. It wasn't that like it only lasts an hour and then it turns off. It was around some of the other things there. Yeah, we got a comment in here. Really like this.
That's, yeah.
We got John here saying blink twice if you don't like this. Love that. Um,
Blink three
yeah, I
times
mean
for
it's pretty
help.
scary.
SOS. That's actually really good use case though. If I blink 10 times really fast, it's SOS
Yeah.
signal that
Yeah.
sends signal to the police or something.
And that's the thing, is that there's a ton of use cases when you get to a everyday wearable smart contact lens that's accepted and tested and healthy and all that, assuming you can get past all of those nuances, right? And the fact that all of the processing, Elisha, is done on an external device. This is a trend we're seeing, right? On these really powerful devices that are basically moving all the processing, and they're doing that 5 gigahertz radio antenna connection to an external device. And you can see if you go, I think you have to go back one, Elisha, and then go forward just to see the video play again, because I think you went back. But anyway, there you go. you can see here in the video they're showing like some of the testing they're doing. This is a really zoomed in camera. This isn't a massive contact lens, but you're seeing all the there's it's a combination of you have UX designers thinking about the interface. You have a lot of these like electrical mechatronic engineers building things, working on processors, things like that, and then you have software developers working on the actual software to connect it all. So you're seeing so many people come together to kind of do the product. There's their CEO with a scary looking kind of contact lens, but super innovative to see kind of the stuff they're doing there. Um, but it's a pretty big news here, just because again, it's the first of its kind, and it's actually been worn by a human. So um, I don't know.
I
I want to get your impressions. Are you thinking like John here, where you're like blink twice if you don't like this, or are you kind of like interesting? Yeah, maybe I'll try that at some point in the future. Would love to know your
so
thoughts.
I personally would love to try this, and I think this will cause a lot of interesting discussion. But I think it might be like a 20 years of controversy that like eventually come to an end. Something that reminds me of is the cochlear plant, that engineered for people hard of hearing or people who actually can't hear at all. And I've studied the history of people with the hard of hearing because I actually learned the American Sign Language, University of Washington, and I
I didn't
also
know that.
studied. Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I studied history, so I took history class, and my teacher, of course, was hard. He couldn't hear, so it was all through the slideshow and all through his sign language where we had all the lectures.
Wow.
So there was no spoken learning experience, and one of the history that we looked into is the controversy around trying to fix the hearing, right? So instead of like being stuck not being able to hear, what if we do surgery and implant this device so that you can actually start hearing outside of the world? And first like 20-40 years there was like a lot of resistance, and there's even documentary of people within the community basically bashing for other people who are getting that treatment, and like, oh, like, are you trying to not be part of us and trying to be part of the rest of the population who have the act like they have the privilege to design the world for people who can hear. And if you think about things like the fire alarm, the reason why it's flashing in your eyes, right? It's for the people who can hear, because how else do they know that something is on the alarm?
You need to use multiple senses, right?
Yep, yep. So that surgery is such a big deal. You spend a couple of $1,000 and trying to connect, part of your ear, and then you're gonna uh, permanently implant a device so you can hear. And that ended up not necessarily returning you to understand what people are saying, but it adds additional signal like, oh, car, I can hear the car. I don't need to understand necessarily what people are saying to me, but I can understand the emotion. I can sense the music. So I bet the same will happen with the eye. I think it's going to have some great medical use case where people who can't maybe see, instead of using phone to tell me, I see a man with a shirt laughing at you, to just have that right in your eyes, right? So that you don't have to point smartphone at people, that will tell you the information. Even if you can't see, it could tell you valuable information around what's around you. Car approaching, danger. Like, so that's one use case I can see. And even if it's not necessarily for the medical reasons, like, I mean, I have bad eyesight, and I have option to wear glass, so AR glass could solve that, or I have
Hmm.
option to do the LASIK to permanently solve it, or not semi-permanently solve it, or I can just pop in the contact lens and be the superhuman that it's kind of cool to be. So yes, yes, it will be cool. Yes, I personally want to try. I see medical use case. I see years of controversies. So I think a lot of things run in
Yeah,
my head.
yeah.
But yeah.
No, I love your perspective on that. Yeah, and I know there's going to be a wide range of opinions on it. I actually posted a TikTok video um, on Metaverse. It's Metaverse Johnny is my account on TikTok, where I post kind of like breaking stuff, breaking news, and things like that, like this. I posted this about 2 hours ago, And it's been interesting to actually, I was actually pulling this up just to get a sense, because it acts as a way to me for me to pull interest level, or is it 70% positive, 70% negative. I'm actually really surprised to say that right now. I mean, it's only been up for a little bit. We're at almost 500 views, and it's like 95% positive. People are like, dope, I'd try this. This sounds great. And so they think about just the coolness of it. There's a lot of other factors. I love what you said, Elisha, around some of the use cases of like the medical use cases. So if you haven't actually, for those that are listening, if you haven't seen the Seeing AI app from Microsoft, you can Google that on Android and iOS. We have no affiliation with Microsoft there, or this app, but it's an app that does what Elisha just talked about, where it launches the camera and you just kind of move around and it'll tell you, man, 34. It does its best to like describe what's in front of you. So if you're somebody that is hard of seeing or blind, you can actually use this app to be able to look around. But it gives you a sense for how AI, computer vision, can be used to help from a medical standpoint. So imagine bringing that tech, got an app store, and you say download the Seeing AI app for your glasses or your contact lenses, right? You start to help to see all the kind of different use cases. The other thing, Elisha, from actual Mojo Vision, and I have this pulled up, is they actually have some medical applications that they've already started to work on. So it's not even like this, oh, here are all the cool things that eventually could happen. They do predict all the things you can happen. If you go to the next slide again here, Elisha, it'll show you on the right-hand side, it'll show you some of the use cases that they're thinking about, for use cases like really fun things like looking at the stars and how that's all just built in, or playing basketball and seeing the trajectory of a basketball, or if you're horseback riding, seeing things that are
Yeah,
in the way, edge
sports.
detection, things like that.
Yeah, sports is interesting use case, right? Because
Yep.
people who have hard time seeing, they have to wear this like
Yep.
band. It's definitely not like convenient. And if you think about like if you're a swimmer, right? Maybe you can't wear the smart glass on top of the goggle unless you make the smart goggle.
They're not waterproof yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would actually even be interesting. Is it fair to wear those smart device when you play sports? So that would be
Yeah.
like another controversy
Oh
of like,
yeah. A whole nother,
you
is it
know,
a competitive
back
advantage?
back in my time, you don't do that, and blah blah blah.
Pre AR contact lenses.
Yeah, yeah,
We didn't get
Eh,
all the tips on who to pass the ball to and things like that. But
yeah.
anyway, I was just gonna say, like on the medical applications, what they're working on are um, contrast enhancements, edge detection.
Mm.
So if you're hard of seeing, so people that have vision impairments such as uh, how do you say that? Glaucoma and
Is it the
macular
one where you can't
degeneration.
see the middle part? Is it
Yes,
okay? Okay,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so. Yeah, it's the glaucoma. Yeah. So, and then macular degeneration is actually something John talked about, but this is actually something they're working on. So they actually have that as one of the things they're looking at for medical applications.
That's so
And they
cool.
said,
Yeah,
yeah, and they can say like if it's too dark, you can actually see in the dark. If it's a little bit like, so it can actually do full fledged like bringing something,
I can be a
because it can do
spy.
edge detection. It can bring something like seeing in the dark. You become, like you said, like that superhuman, and
Whoa.
all the medical things that it would do with people that have vision
I
impairments.
see so many, yeah, interesting defense slash military use case for that.
Yep.
That would
Yep.
be superhuman. Yeah, I'll be really excited for the medical use case.
Yeah.
Like if there's a way to create the digital vision right in the middle, so you can see as if you can see the whole retina, right? Instead of missing right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Yep.
Yeah, so many,
So yeah,
so many cool
I,
applications.
like I asked on the TikTok video, for those that are watching, I'm curious to know if it's something you'd be interested in wearing. Let's say, assuming that it passes all the health tests and it's not bad for your eye, and it can be waterproof, all those kinds of things. Is it something that you would ever test out? And
Yeah,
we can move on from there.
yeah, yeah. Please keep leaving a comment. We'll bring it up even if we move on to the next slide. We'll just bring up some of the comments that you guys post.
Do you want to cover, by the way, the comment around Google Maps? It looks like we had a LinkedIn user talk about that.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. So this is when we were talking about the Orlando Metaverse. Yeah, I would love. I'm pretty sure Google, Apple, because they are spending so much, even human labor, on top of the automated aerial view. Wouldn't be surprised if they spend their labor time and also the AI technologies to create the metaverse. And I know Apple, they are definitely spending their own labor time, like creating like some city enhancing. The other day, I was navigating on Google Map, and it had a pop up saying like, "Oh, we have more information on the map now," and I didn't really
Yeah.
click on it to see what more information I have, but I'll be excited to.
You could have
Yeah,
been a beta user for their metaverse. No, I'm kidding.
yeah.
No, that's a good point. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see some of the things that come from that. And then John's telling us here about the Mojo lens and just that the idea of having that there. Integration with LinkedIn would appeal. Like the fact that I could run into somebody at a networking event or like a CES, South by Southwest, whatever, and I'm like, oh wow, this is the CEO of Niantic or this is the whoever it is.
Yeah,
Important, not important, doesn't matter. Just the fact that it can act as a CRM in a sense. You can get
yeah.
information and details about the person prior. But you
Now,
can't look like an unhinged cyborg for the next few years,
yeah.
or wife will leave him.
You
Love
also
it,
need
John.
a counter, right? If you're someone who don't want to attract the attention, you need the counter of the. It's like the Black Miller type of story of how do I make it
Yeah,
so I'm not detectable? How can I pay
yeah.
money? How can I pay money to LinkedIn so that I'm off the list of
Oh,
recognition?
yeah, like, take me off your do not call list, like, there's gonna
Yep.
be a whole
Yeah, I
imagine all the
assume so.
businesses that will be created from this.
I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well,
Cool. Well,
appreciate the comment on that, John.
we'll keep covering on this. Like, I want to follow on this news. I'll be super excited. So the last segment we have is Fresh Showcase, where we show hands-on, and the hands-on could range from like, okay, Apple released this AR kit, which is exactly what we're going to talk about, and we tried it out. And it doesn't necessarily mean we spent like weeks developing something on it, but we really want to show uh, us hands-on using technology and also thinking about, is it ready for your business, is it ready to be used, um, or do we need to wait, or are there alternative technologies that your business should be looking at it. So hopefully we end with the useful insight to take away. The first one, Johnny, AR kit room plan. And that's something that just got announced in the Apple WWDC, which is a conference designed for software engineers, obviously for the Apple ecosystem. And we cover this, Johnny, you covered this as part of the sign of AR is everywhere in WWDC. And this was
Yep.
one that they show like a little bit of segment, but like, of course, it's one of the tiny segments that they just quickly move on. So we downloaded it. I installed. We both installed the latest iOS 16 beta 2. It's only available for the beta
Pretty stable
program
for your main
users.
device, but,
Yeah.
don't bank on our opinion on it because it could crash, it could break your phone. But, it's
Yep.
nice to get the early updates to see all the new things that are coming here in the next month.
Yep. So I basically downloaded a sample application that Apple provides. They usually do that with any new SDK they launch. They always show, here's a sample code that you can run to understand how API works. So I downloaded that, compiled, installed on my iPhone, and running it. And I was at Fresh Office, so I decided to use this Loom Plan feature at Fresh Office and see how it performs. So basically, I have this application running, and then it tells me like, okay, point camera at bottom of edge of the wall. So this is our cafeteria in Seattle office, third room. By the way, we have free lunches, so if you want to visit us in person and get to know all the cool stuff we're doing at Fresh Consulting, let us know or let me know. I'll take you and give you a tour of our office. And this is our cafeteria area. So you can see as I'm walking around this somewhat complex geometry shape of our kitchen, where we have island in the middle, and we have the top shelf, bottom shelf, like fridge and other device, and of course there's a gap in the top of the top shelf. It does pretty good job recognizing rectangular shape, and in the middle you see it's generating this polygon shape that shows the rough edges of the cafeteria area. And you can actually export this as a file. I have not actually played with the exported file. And I don't know if you can bring that into like spatial or like some kind of just
You
load it
can.
into. You can? Okay. I
You
didn't know that.
can because, the GL the what is it?
GL
GLFT file
FT? Oh, yeah, yeah.
is a very similar file type to the GLB file, which is acceptable by a lot of these metaverse platforms that let you bring in custom environments. So theoretically, you could bring this in. Of course, it'd be blocks. It wouldn't actually be scanned, you know, real, you're not really creating a digital twin here, but you're getting a floor plan that's putting blocks. And by the way, this particular version in beta 2 has, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 34, 50, 16 different objects it can detect. So that's like storage devices, refrigerator, stove, bed, sink, washer, toilet, bathtub, oven, dishwasher, table, tons of other stuff. Um, and there's a so it can detect those things, and then when it interprets it in this model, then it can show them on the screen there. So the idea is that eventually you'll be able to get even more objects that get recognized. This is really cool though. I don't think I've seen it do. I haven't tried like a massive room like that, Elisha.
Yeah, and in the next one, I did try going into a conference room, but starting outside a conference room. So this is all over like a video gear equipment on the shelf, but it's able to recognize the shelf shape despite like other random things on top of it. And you can start to see edges being connected. It's kind of like an actually satisfying experience
It looks so
when
magical.
when I walk around, it's like, oh yeah, it's recognizing, it's connecting the dot, and the line gets drawn, and somehow it feels magical just because it's visualized to my eyes, right? So now I'm going into the room, and it's a little bit
Oh
tiny on the
wow.
bottom, but you can see that it recognized it as a room, so it kind of expanded the canvas size, and that it recognized another square shape, it recognized TV shape, it's starting to connect the dot. And despite a lot of chairs kind of like floating around, it has no problem recognizing a desk or differentiating the desk shape uh, among all these chairs. And then I pretty much like cover the entire space, and you can see that the square box of the room gets drawn and closing the door, closing the wall. I guess it doesn't do
Wow.
great job with the glasses uh, as much, but you can see that it recognized the conference room starting from the outside.
That's from like a minute and a half of just walking around and just letting it scan. And this is a combination of the camera, the built-in camera on the backside of your
Mhm.
phone, which is a pretty high-end camera, mixed with the lidar, right, Elisha?
Yes, it's a lidar sensor. So it would only work if you have an iPhone with the lidar sensor. I think the latest ones and especially the higher end ones have it, but I'm not sure if all of it has it. If not, you can also try to use recent iPad. Some of them have lidars built in. So yeah, you can't really download this because you have to know how to compile the program. But I'm pretty sure companies like IKEA and even Lowe's, right? Instead of just releasing the 3D assets, Lowe's can now use this API and like first scan your room. Okay, now place your
Yep.
Lowe's furniture, Lowe's like a fridge
Yep.
in here to see if it fits in your fridge dimension. The number one reason for return is the dimensions for many retail businesses. I almost ordered oversized not dishwasher, the washer and dryer
Oh.
for the older condo complex that my mom owns. It's I think built in 1950. We didn't realize the latest smart washer dryers like Samsung, LG, even though the heights have not changed or it fits perfectly, the depth from the front to back has increased. So I almost ordered the latest ones that actually wouldn't let me close the shutter between the washer and
Yeah.
the living room area. So that's apparently the number one reason of return. So it'll be cool to use this planning, right? Not just hypothetical, but like, okay, I want to buy a new fridge. I want to buy a new washer. Does it even fit? I also replaced the dishwasher, and I have to measure it. And it's kind of tricky to measure because like you have to go in, open the door, and then put the measurement
Yep.
inside. And they tell you like, well, it's from the end of the inside washer to like the front closing, it's like, well, like a dimension can be different, right? Interior dimension, exterior dimension. Like I can just see so many use case of this loom planning, especially as an SDK, not a proprietary Apple application that usually not many people use, but it's SDK. So any company, any software engineer can use this SDK to build this exact feature that's being showcased here and add their own flavor, whether it be planning for your decor furniture or it's for the digital twin project, right? In this
Yep.
project, it's not showing the high fidelity, but I'm pretty sure you can make it high
Yep.
fidelity.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think this recent weeks have been a lot of this BR AR technologies kind of like coming alive. I think I can see within a year or two. Johnny, you were talking about the Apple potential rumor to release their own AR glasses. Like I can see that like within a year or two, like all these things are coming together.
Yep. Well, I think about like if you have a Meta Quest today, right? If you have a Quest headset and you go into a room and you put it on for the first time. For those that have experienced this, you'll know this. For those that haven't, this is what it looks like. It'll say you need to set a boundary around your room. And so it basically does a pass through view of you can actually see your room while you have the headset. It's in pretty low black and white quality. And then you go and specify on the floor where your playable area is, right? And you say, okay, avoid this thing, avoid this desk. And you might have a small little area. If you have a big room, you'll have a bigger room. But you go and specify that. In a version that's in beta right now with Meta, they're doing something very similar to what we're seeing with Room Plan, which is it detects walls and it detects objects. It doesn't know what the objects are, but it knows that something's there and the boundary gets auto set. So then you can say, like you put on the headset and it'll say, hey, walk around a little bit, right? And you start walking around just like Elisha's doing and it's scanning it. And so we're seeing Apple come up with their own version that's available to developers like Polycam, Scaniverse, Zillow, all these apps that will need to these locations. He talked about IKEA, Amazon, those things, all that might come from just the AR kit side of things. But if Apple releases that mixed reality headset, I would imagine they do like Room Plan is going to be built into the thing, right? You don't have to
Mhm.
go and specify.
Yeah.
It's going to go detect objects, and it might even create your own personal metaverse environment, similar to what Quest just launched last week, where you actually now have your home environment and you can invite people to it, and it's your own space. They might have a version where it's like a digital twin version of the room. So if I did it in this room, then it would scan this room, and this would become my quote unquote virtual home where I can hang up digital art and NFTs and put games on the wall or music and whatever, right? And so we're seeing more and more of these foundational technologies, foundational SDKs, APIs that are going to enable things like that into the future.
Yeah, and I want to touch on why Apple is doing this as SDK. I built a machine learning trained model in the past where I manually trained to recognize sticky notes. Johnny, we worked on this together and even recognize the writing on sticky note. And when I trained the model, it came out to be 60 megabytes by default.
Wow.
And I could compress it down like smaller, but by losing some of the fidelity. So like maybe it's accurate to 99%, but you can drop it to like 97%. It drops on the accuracy, but you can make it smaller. And obviously you don't want every application to ship with this AR room plan capability of 60 megabytes, 100 megabytes each, right? So by building in the SDK, one, Apple wants to encourage the use of it, especially if they're going to announce the AR glasses, but also it reduces the size of the application file. That's good for Apple, saving
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth. It's good for users, saving bandwidth. It's for great for engineers. And in fact, we actually build mobile applications, and I also build iOS applications. And we have a team of engineers at Fresh Consulting. So, if you want to jump onto this game of like, let's use this AR Kit Loom plan, so that in a year, when it's or year or half an year, when it's released to the users, and it usually takes about a year when the latest iOS version gets deployed to like majority of the users who are catching up, by the time like your application could have the capability ARKit provides to build these room planning. So if you have any business opportunity, we would love to discuss with you. and see how we can help you implement these technologies to your business
Yeah.
application. And I
Yeah.
want to quickly come back to Vanessa's comment just before we close off, because I think this is one area that I think everyone has something that to say, right? Like, especially around the data privacy that we just touched on
Yep.
lightly. How do we protect data privacy if I don't want to be recognized by facial? How do I be on the remove list? I'm pretty sure Europe is going to lead in the discussion
Oh,
of
yep.
privacy as well, right? So
GDPR, right?
yeah,
Well, yeah, and it's a definitely an important thing. It's true. There's a cool factor to it, and that's like, oh, great, awesome. But yeah, with any new technology, it is at that intersection of the data privacy, concealing things, right? And it can definitely be unsettling. Definitely big things, and there might be regulations, there might be big discussions to happen there, and it opens up maybe a whole nother can of worms as you think about the adoption of this new technology. But
yeah,
that
yeah.
actually is a theme, by the way, Elisha. Earlier I talked about the video I posted, having about 500 views. Right now it's at 6,500 views, so it's about averaging
Oof.
about 500 views a minute. But it's a lot of the comments are about the privacy. So some of the things I'm seeing there of the 61 comments are around like, wow, is this going to be like the main plot points of the Black Mirror episode? And what about give it 5 minutes before it starts to run ads, or things like that. So it's interesting to get all the
Yes.
different perspectives, but there's a lot in there around privacy, some questions there, and definitely something that will have to be tackled when you introduce these new technologies.
I love that. I think consumers these days are well informed about these things. I think if you think about generations of consumers acquiring more intelligence around the technology, and I think Facebook contributed quite a bit to the, I think, understanding of data privacy. And we've seen them putting a lot of efforts into, as we create the metaverse world with the Oculus Quest, how do we answer the data privacy questions? And I think they know that consumers can ask about it, right? So they're very conscious of it. I'm pretty sure all these tech companies releasing products like this in the AR space are
Thinking about that.
basically almost like a required to think about it, right? Like if you don't have the privacy statement in your product, whether it's Kickstarter or whatever, I don't think people are gonna support your business. Government's not gonna give you easy time, right? Supporting or giving FDA approval or whatever. Maybe that's separate field, but I'm pretty sure with more government involvement around the Web3 tech and bipartisan bills that we discussed around cryptocurrencies, I'm pretty sure there will be some regulation coming around the data privacy and AR. And if you guys
Absolutely.
have more questions in the audience, that we'll give just a few more minutes, just so we have
Yeah.
enough time allowed it. In the meantime, I did want to quickly cover on the smart lens is feature complete bullet point where you talk about pixel per inch, image sensor, eye tracking. If you guys watch last episode where we cover the VR technology innovations that Meta is working on, they talk about this concept as a whole called visual Turing test. What's required for our eyes to naturally perceive the view, whether it's a VR, AR, through a lens, right? Something in between my eyes to the physical world. What's required to achieve the visual or pass the visual Turing test, so we don't feel motion sickness, we perceive it as real with a lot of depth. I think they are covering a lot of it, like 14K pixel per inch, so that it's like a super retina view, right? Like
Hmm.
smartphone, like around 300, 400 ppi is enough, because we are never looking at smartphone like this. But
Absolutely.
if I look at my iPhone at this distance, I can definitely tell, like, oh,
You can
there's
see the
something
pixels.
all right. So to really achieve that right in your retina, I guess 14K, I don't know if that's required to hit that, or if that's a current limitation and there's more upper
Yeah.
we can go. But that's one image sensor for eye tracking, so that if I look at somewhere, it may be doing something interesting to tweak optically to like know where I'm looking at. And all these
Hmm.
things are really contributing. So along with this live show, I encourage everyone to go back one episode and looking at how we covered extensively on the Meta's innovation that they're working on in the reality labs here in the Redmond.
Yep.
Cool. I think that's it for the questions. I haven't
Oh,
seen.
I think we have one more comment here, I think from Mikolai. Thank you for your comment on here. Designing, projecting, ordering a deck or cover next to house from Lowe's would be awesome. That's a great application of something like that. Being able to use the, Lowe's technology, maybe even a mix of the AR kit thing that you showed with room plan and planning it, planning where you might place things like a deck or cover in the future. It's a great, great comment.
Yeah, and maybe if you work with this would have been so great pre Pandy era, because then you can work with the remote. I guess even today works, right? Remote room coordinator. You can send your scanning of the room and they'll help you pick the furniture if
Yep.
I'm the kind of person who doesn't know what to do, right? With the interior design. So,
Yep.
well,
Cool. Yeah, I think we're about 5 minutes over, but it was good to see all the comments today. It was great to see some of the back and forth on that. Thank you to those that commented. Elisha, I'll let you close us out.
yeah, please subscribe to Fresh Labs. We are on YouTube, so we stream this every week Wednesday. We can almost stream on the LinkedIn. We just need a little bit more followers to be able to do that. But you can follow us on LinkedIn if you want to save that event on your calendar, or you can follow us on the YouTube stream. And if you hit the bell as soon as we go live, you'll be notified. And also, Johnny and you can follow us on individually on LinkedIn, Twitter, and we're also on the TikTok. So especially Johnny has a more extensive content on the TikTok. If you want to be on the latest, like as soon as the news come out, uh, Johnny would have it covered up. And weekly, we are covering a lot of cool tech news, especially on the emerging tech. And just like today, we are going to show more hands-on going forward. So please be looking forward to those updates from us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys in next week, Wednesday, noon Pacific time.